So today we are talking the Elicar 35mm f2.8 prime lens. Got my notes. Not too much information on this lens online. The little bits that I did find weren't particularly useful, so most of the information that you will gather about this lens will be through the photos that I made and the videos that I captured with this lens adapted to my Lumix S5. Now, right off the bat, most of the things that I'll have to say would be things that you would mostly hear about lenses that are within this affordability range and on the vintage side. So wide open, you can find it a little bit difficult to focus, but when you do get that focus, the focus is decently sharp. It gets easier as you make the aperture smaller, so from about f4, 5.6, even f3-ish, I can't remember the exact stop that you've got there, I can tell you now, at f3.5 it becomes pretty easy to focus. But when you get a beautiful focus wide open, the photos come out beautifully. One of the other standard things that you might hear from affordable vintage lenses is that they are prone to ghosting. You'll get flares if you shoot in the wrong directions in the wrong conditions, but these are things that I don't think need to be considered negatives, because if you understand how to overcome those scenarios or how to overcome those problems, in other words, don't shoot against the sun, maybe shoot with the sun behind you, softer light, things like that, you can overcome the ghosting and the flaring and the softness of the images overall. And I think this is something that you can get even with modern lenses today. So not a complaint from my end. And overall, I would say that the potential for good photo and good video with this lens is pretty decent. If you understand what conditions are good to shoot in, you can get some pretty decent photos, in my opinion. Okay, with some background history on this lens, distributed by Jaka Corporation in Japan, who operated under a similar business model to that of Vivitar, which is a US company. So affordable lenses, not on the high-end spectrum of lenses. As far as I can tell, this lens became widely available in the 80s, and that was in Japan, but it was marketed and listed in the UK around 1974. Whether it was actually manufactured in 1974, I can't find that information, but we're looking at around an 80s through to the 90s lens. They didn't only make a 35mm lens for these Elicar 2.8s. There's a few of them. I'll put a picture of it because I found that online. So they are available, but I couldn't even find a copy of this on eBay. This I found by accident. I'd been looking out for a 35mm prime lens, and I managed to find one on Facebook Marketplace in Cape Town. But it wasn't being sold as the lens, it was more the camera that had a lens attached to it. So the camera was going for 200 Rand, which is around 8 or 9 pounds, and the camera itself I think is a Practica LTL, properly working. It had some film inside it, and it had this lens attached to it. So I'm still shooting with that camera, but it's in Cape Town right now, still trying to get through that roll of film that was inside the camera. But I brought this lens with me to test out, as I mentioned, adapted to my Lumix S5. So this lens can be used as an automatic lens when adapted to an appropriate camera. I'm assuming a camera that takes a micro four thirds. We are discussing M42, a camera that has an M42 bayonet that can take M42 camera, M42 lenses, and if that camera has the ability to shoot at aperture priority, this lens would be appropriate for that, because you can shoot automatically with aperture priority, I believe. And also there is the function to switch it to manual, which is convenient for me because I can shoot it manually adapted to my mirrorless camera. Overall, the lens feels good, it feels sturdy, it feels decently good quality, but I would say that the matte finish to the silver paint or the silver material that it's made out of, don't actually know what it's made out of, I think it's metal, but it's got like a matte finish, a type of matte finish, and it does feel cheap. That's not really anything to complain about. Focus throw, to go from minimal focus distance all the way to infinity focus, it takes me about 2 full attempts. And if I'm just relaxing, holding the camera, doing the lens, doing this, focusing like this, it takes about 5 little turns like this to go from minimal focus distance to the infinity focus, or vice versa. So I'd say it's maybe around a 300-degree focus throw. I didn't check that out. With regard to chromatic aberrations, as far as I can tell straight out of camera, I don't think there are any. As I've mentioned in a previous video, some of my edits tend to pull out what can appear to be chromatic aberrations, but that's because I do some color shifting that isn't appropriate for various colors, and then that brings out what could appear to be chromatic aberration. But with this one straight out of camera, I don't believe I saw any of that stuff. Spherical aberration, I think yes, though I find it appealing. My eye isn't trained enough to be able to tell whether what I'm seeing in the outer focus areas on not the center, around the center, so on the outskirts of the frame, whether that is spherical aberration or if it's just normal depth of field. But I think it is spherical aberration, which I find to be somewhat attractive in images if they're the appropriate images. The aperture clicks are strong and sturdy, and aperture 2.8 and 4 are hard clicks, and then from there onwards you also have clicks in between each aperture value, which is a nice little touch. So with regard to the photos and the videos that I have been sharing while talking to the camera and the lens, they were made in Brisbane. I went to visit my brother in Brisbane. My brother and I went through a few years not seeing too much of each other due to circumstances. He works really hard, I work really hard, and up until maybe a year ago, or just over a year ago, we managed to see each other when visiting my mom in Lima, and then also my brother came to visit me here in London when he was on business, and now I've gone to visit him, so we've made more of an effort to see each other more regularly, which I'm grateful for. And for this particular trip, during my city walks in Brisbane, I decided to take this lens along with me only. I did take my Lumix 24-105 f4, but that was for the wildlife sanctuary, and I'll share that video fairly soon. But yeah, to fully immerse myself within this lens and to immerse myself within the city of Brisbane, I just carried around this setup. I can say that I'm a fan of the 35mm focal length. I have been experiencing with other vintage lenses, other prime lenses, and so far I will say that 35mm is my favorite focal length. I'll be shooting more of it. I might even consider maybe acquiring or finding a more decent quality 35mm prime lens for my camera. As I mentioned, I couldn't find much information on this lens, and I couldn't even find it on eBay. But if you were to find this on eBay and it appears to be in a good clean condition, I wouldn't recommend against you checking it out if it is at a decent price. I wouldn't pay too much for this lens, other than unless you were using it for a very particular project that has the need for that kind of vintage lens, almost soft look. Actually, I'll take that back, because I don't think all the photos that are in focus are soft. So when you get a shot that's in focus, it's decently in focus, especially if you're not shooting against the light. If you're shooting in the right conditions with the light behind you, you can get a very decent quality image with this lens. I think overall, if you're interested in playing around with vintage lenses and you have the budget to do so, even if you have a very small budget to do so, you can get away from it. You can get away with it. You can go to markets, you can look for sellers online that maybe accept a return, so that if there is something wrong with the lens, you can return it. It is a really fun realm of photography to play with, especially if you find that maybe you're looking for something to bring some excitement back to it. I wouldn't say it's necessary for that, but it certainly can help, and it really has brought a lot of fun back into photography and taking photos and just walking around cities with the intention of taking photos and seeing the world through that lens. It really is recommendable. I don't know if you can tell, once again in this video I'm sweating like a pig, so I'm going to end it at that. I do hope you've enjoyed the videos that I made within this video. I hope that you have enjoyed the photos that I've shared. I hope you found some value. I hope you learned something possibly, and maybe have been motivated to go out within your city or within your town with whatever lens you have to just see the city or the town in a certain way. I put up one of my favorite ones, or my favorite set from one of my walks. This beautiful building with the Hungry Jacks. That's like the Australian equivalent to Burger King. By far my favorite image captured on this lens. Just, I feel like it displays how I felt during that walk. Just at peace. I just gotten over the jet lag. I was just so happy to be there, and the building just brought me so much happiness. And I hope that the edit can reflect that. Right, so that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here. I do appreciate it. Don't forget to keep taking photos, keep making videos, take care of yourselves, and I will catch you in the next one. Cheers! And if you find that you might be interested in any other video that I've made, feel free to check this one out where I test out black and white medium format film for the first time with a studio light.